Welcome, thank you for coming to this talk. So it's entitled Midwives Ethiopia, Cross-Cultural Collaborative Working. So I could talk for hours and hours about this charity and its work. So we've tried to angle it, concentrating on the cross-cultural aspect of it and issues that throws up to us and benefits it throws up to us as midwives working in the UK, really. There's quite a few here in the audience who have actually been with the charity. Emma in the front there is one of the trustees, so if I dry up, I'll look at her helplessly and she'll butt in as well. So I also work as a clinical supervisor in Aneurin, Bevan, and Emma's the consultant midwife and research midwife in Aneurin, Bevan as well. So we're both full-time midwives as well as volunteers for this charity. We founded the charity about 7 years ago. Luckily there was a pre-existing charity working in Ethiopia in the area that we work. So there were really good foundations of partnership laid already there. We had very strong links with government officials and with midwives in Ethiopia already formed, which was really, really important for us as a charity. We're actually 5 volunteers. I'm not sure where I got the 6 from. Can't add up, but we encourage as much as possible participation from student midwives, from work experience students. We're small. Logistically, we have to keep our trips fairly small in number. So we do, anybody who's interested, we ask them to put in a letter of interest and sell themselves a little bit and give us an idea of what they might bring to the charity. And it may just be that you come as an observer, or it may be that you take part quite actively in the teaching as well, depending on what skills you have and what you want to get out of it from a trip. So far, we've been primarily supported by funding from the Welsh Government, which has been amazing, and from the Headley Trust, which is an educational charity from Sainsbury's. So we've had good funding. We're in the process of looking for more funding at the moment because funding doesn't go on forever. So that's part of the work we do is looking for funding for the projects as well. So a little bit of background. Ethiopia has a population, I think it's probably near 100 million now. Figures seem to vary a bit, but it's a big populated country. 80% of that population live in a rural setting, very similar to this when you're looking out the windows. We work in sort of the southern, tiny area in the southern part of Ethiopia. So it doesn't all look like that, but it's quite lush and the soil's quite red. It's really sort of vibrant and lovely to look at. Only 16% of women actually deliver with skilled birth attendant in Ethiopia. There are numerous reasons for that. There aren't very many midwives that are trained. Women live in rural setting. They don't have the skills to recognise when they need to go to the hospital or a health centre setting, and transport is difficult. So there's a well-known model called the 3 delays model, which is a good way of looking at why women don't access the care. So as a result, the maternal death rate is really quite high, 450 per 100,000. And that's why we do it, really. If there's anything that we can do to help reduce that maternal death rate figure, and obviously infant mortality as well is huge, we'll do it. Ethiopia has a very comprehensive health development strategy. The government has taken through over the last 15 years and developed a health system. It's not brilliant, it's not ideal, but there is an organised strategy in how to reach those women in health centres. And our work hopefully is just on the back of that. It's really important that we do what the local government have already in place, not what we think is the best thing to do. So that's the real foundation of our work, really. So the overall aim is to work in partnership with Ethiopian midwives and allied health workers to meet sustainable development goals. Are you all familiar with the sustainable development goals? Yeah. So number 3 is actually about improving health. So anything that comes under that category. There's also Sustainable Development Goal 17, which is about partnership, really, and sustainable partnerships. So hopefully that's a big part of our work as well. And obviously, as I've just said, working within the government health strategies. So yeah, this is one of our midwives teaching sessions, and Zalelem is a midwife who often supports us both with translation and the teaching. And you can just see sitting beside me, Deborah Wack is also a midwife who's been with the charity throughout, who has been a huge support. So we have two main objectives really, or two main projects I suppose you call them. One is to provide annual CPD training for midwives and for health extension workers. So part of the Ethiopian health strategy is to train a layer of educated women in the rural setting, or to work in the rural setting, mainly through preventative measures of contraception, immunisation, but they also do an awful lot of the antenatal care for women. Traditionally, women will have just delivered with a traditional birth attendant in their little mud hut in the middle of nowhere, really. The health extension workers' remit is not to do the deliveries, although unofficially we suspect they do an awful lot of the deliveries. So we're a little bit caught between what the government say, which is that they shouldn't be doing the deliveries, and kind of our knowledge that they probably are doing them. So we feel that we need to help them with those skills for clean, safe delivery, really basic stuff. So we do a couple of days each of our biannual trips working with the health extension, and that's been brilliant over the 7 years or the longer that some of us have been involved with the work there, to see their development. It was very new when we first started out as a charity, the health extension workers role. They've really blossomed. They've obviously gained a lot of status, because in the beginning they were dressed as a rural woman would have done, and now they've all got fancy haircuts and posh clothes, and they've obviously got a bit of status as well through their work, and really been accepted in the community, which has been amazing to see, and improved women's health through that. So the outcomes we hope are that we cascade those emergency drill trainings, which is kind of the essence of our CPD training, and through that improve outcomes for mothers and babies. Quite difficult to audit that outcome. It's quite difficult to say we've saved so many lives by doing our training, but we get very good qualitative feedbacks from the midwives of the support that we give and the extra training. Ethiopian midwives can knock spots off me and my, sort of technical midwifery speak, if you like. But when it comes to hands-on skills, they don't have the same experience. Once they're qualified as a midwife, if they've come top of their class, they immediately become the lecturer. So the lecturers are not brilliantly skilled in hands-on midwifery. So I think we feel that's a really big gap that we're filling. We take dolls and pelvises and do quite a lot of role play to improve those practical skills. Yes, a big one, like I say, the reason that women are not getting to skilled birth attendants to deliver is often a delay in recognising the ones that really do need to be referred either to a health centre where there isn't an awful lot of medical support, but there's a little bit, or to a larger referral hospital where they definitely would have the option of forceps and caesareans. So by training the health extension on recognising those danger signs of pregnancy and educating the women in the villages about those danger signs of pregnancy, we can have a big impact. And one thing that we can measure is that one of the health centres we've worked with, there has been a huge increase in the time that we worked there. We can't put it all down to our work, but we like to think we've got a part of that, is that whereas 25% of the population of women seem to be attending that particular health centre, which was a good health centre, that seemed to increase to 70% in the 18 months that we'd been working with that health centre. So we have got some concrete figures to make us feel that we're making a difference with our work, really. And a big aspect, I think, is empowerment of women. There are big gender issues in Ethiopia, as there are in any country, really. But I think, midwives have to have that self-belief of the amount of difference that they can make to a women's health outcome, and hence to society. That economic boost that healthy women and teenage women and babies can make to a country is phenomenal, really, if we look after it from the start. It's the same here. It's the importance of our role here, isn't it? So working in a low resource setting is challenging, as Hayley and Becky, who have recently been and kind of new to it. You have to be quite adaptive. You have to you have a little plan of how things are going to work, and then the heavens open, the rain comes, and everybody goes home, or the minibus breaks down, or people just don't turn up, or all sorts of things we have to just adapt to and do our best because we've got limited time, limited resources, and just get on with it. I'll show you a slide just afterwards of some of the low-cost teaching aids that we use, but we take dolls and pelvises, use those a lot. And we've developed some nice teaching cards. I'll show you those. Role play, it takes a little bit of time for the midwives to get into role play. They're quite hesitant, but it is exactly the same here, isn't it? If I said, all right, we're going to do a bit of role play, not many of you would jump up and want to do it. But once they get going, they really throw themselves into it, and it just adds an element of fun to the teaching if we can get them to join in. I've been really interested in this idea of the development of cultural intelligence. I came across a kind of competence tool, which, you know, if any of you are interested, is worth looking up. This is actually from the Canadian government, but it can be adapted to any country. But it's that idea that, you know, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence, but how much cultural intelligence do we really have? And that is incredibly relevant to our work in the UK, as well as when we're working in an obviously different culture. But it asks questions like, it's a scoring system, and you know, you respond as whether you always react that way or you've never react that way, and you end up with the score at the end. But it asks questions like, I view human difference as positive and a cause for celebration. Do I always think that way? Do I never think that way? Or do I sometimes? It challenges you about how you think about difference, basically. Be aware of areas of discomfort. I'm aware of my discomfort when I encounter differences in race, colour, religion, sexual orientation, language and ethnicity. It makes you think, do I feel really uncomfortable, or am I at ease with that, and how do I change that? So it's a phenomenally long list asking about, you know, are we aware of our political situation in our country and how that affects how we view different cultures. So I would recommend any midwife read through something like that, just to, you know, you might think I'm really open-minded, and when you read this you think, am I, or do I have to be honest that I feel really uncomfortable, or I'm not very adaptive? And I think travelling in a place like Ethiopia really challenges that about you as well. I mean, it's hysterical, some of the things we observe about other cultures, but then we have to step back and say, actually, we're exactly the same, just in a different format. You know, we get tied up in bureaucracy and do ridiculous things, which other cultures would have hysterics over. But yeah, it really challenges our ability to communicate well as well. In Ethiopia, just a simple example, I can't even do it. When they say no, they do that, and when they say yes, they do that. And just that little thing can really throw a conversation, because you think, what do they mean? And it's just a simple, you know, non-verbal use of words. I'll be careful I don't go on for too long now. One of the battles as a charity, I think, is not to change the idea of charity from being an imperialist kind of instructive idea to be a genuine partnership. We can talk about partnership, but are we genuinely including everybody in decision making, and is it really responsive to that country's need, or is it what we think that country needs? And we have to constantly debate that amongst ourselves. We don't get it right often. One of our latest debates, if you like, was with the health centre that we work with for improving standards. So that was the other project I was telling about. It felt quite transactional. We had this big idea of introducing reflective learning, getting them to audit their practice, to set their own standards. And really it seemed what they might have wanted was a motorbike. And the motorbike fitted in with the whole vision because they're quite careful and they audit it. They're quite careful about using the motorbike as an outreach so that the midwives that work in the health centre can go to the villages and monitor antenatal care and support the health extension workers. So it does fit in with our ethos, if you like, but then you start to wonder, is that what it's all about? Is it just about a status symbol and a motorbike? Which is not hugely expensive to us as a charity, but we did buy them one in the end. But it wasn't without a lot of debate and thought, and have we done the wrong thing, and is that the expectation that is then going to be there? We've tried very hard, generally, not to be the provider of things. We're not coming to give them things, we're coming to equip them and empower them to teach and cascade skills, or to set their own standards. We're giving them a framework in which to set the standards, but trying not to tell them what standards we think they should institute. So that's just an example of role play. This is the health extension workers. We just try and get them to equip themselves. In the past, we have provided them with safe delivery kits, but it basically is just plastic sheeting for the floor, a clean razor blade to cut the cord, a piece of string and a bar of soap. And it's pretty basic, but that can really limit sepsis and make things an awful lot safer. So we did a role play with them once, trying to talk about respectful care and the importance, which is a huge thing for the World Health Organization, and midwifery across the world at the moment is really instituting more respectful care. So we did a role play of some awful scene where we were totally disrespectful of the woman, and then asked the midwives what they'd observed about that. And they all shot their hand up, and we thought, oh, this is brilliant. And they said, you didn't put your gloves on before delivery. And they were quite right. We hadn't thought, because that wasn't the point of that. But they were so focused on their teaching about preventing infection, which is really important, that's still what they were seeing out of this awful situation of shouting at the woman and being rough with her. So that's a really good example of that cross-cultural difference, where we have one presumption of what it is we're trying to teach and how we're trying to get it across, and it's kind of way off what someone else is thinking or how they're perceiving things. These are the lovely teaching cards that she's actually a British woman who lives in Ethiopia, and she's an illustrator, so she did the cards for us. Took us quite a long time to get them right, because we had to obviously order them and make sure that the message we were giving in illustrations that we were doing or directing were interpreted correctly by women in the rural setting. So they're used quite widely. We haven't published them as such, we just laminate them ourselves each time we go. But the health extension workers use them to teach women. And there's also a group of women in the village designated as the Health Development Army who were untrained, or very basically trained, but they use them to talk to women in their community about warning signs of the red cards, and the green cards are healthy signs of lookout in pregnancy. And yet, we try and involve as much interactive teaching as we can in our courses as well. So this was a group of midwives talking about postnatal care in group work. So, yeah, a lot of it is about providing, empowering midwives, really, is what we hope to really, that's quite hard to measure, isn't it? But with our work with the standards, as I've said before, we would like to give them a framework which they can then work within their health centre to improve standards. And those standards we work with them to set are something as basic as respectful care. So how do we actually institute it? Are we making sure that everybody greets the woman with a smile, and is she shown where to go? Just some really, really basic stuff. Domestic violence and violence towards women is quite a big issue in Ethiopia. It's quite a taboo subject, so it's difficult to measure, but women are not treated well in labour on the whole. So it's going back to basics, really. So doing workshops with the midwives in health centres to tussle out some of those things that we can do to improve respectful care. And then some of the standards we're setting are things like breech delivery and emergency situations as well. I've said before, using reflective learning tools, which is a bit novel to a lot of the midwives in Ethiopia, but they seem to have taken it on board, and we ask them to do monthly sessions where they discuss a case and look at what they've, a risk meeting, but we don't call it that, just for them to learn themselves really how they can improve their own care, what did they did well. Encouraging that sense of pride in their health centre, which is big. There's been a bit of a competitive element between the two health centres we've worked with, is who's doing better about getting the women into the health centre. So that's been quite interesting to see as a sort of part of our work. Encouraging them to use their data collection that we do with them as evidence to take to the government and say, look, we're doing a good job. This is what you've asked us to do in your strategy. Where's the money to implement this? This is what we need to set those standards. Like us, probably doesn't work, but it's, you know, that's how you start to empower people, isn't it? You say, here's some evidence to use. And the midwifery profession itself, there's no real sense of accountability. There's no kind of legal framework around it. So it's interesting just to watch that beginning to develop and how keen midwives are for that to happen as well. Did I miss one out? Yeah, sorry. And then just briefly, the benefits to NHS midwives, they're quite hard to quantify. We've been lucky enough, some of us, to be given some study leave to do this work, even though it's not directly related to the health board. But it's been valued enough for them to do that for us. So I think we feel a duty to bring back something to the health board as well. And all of the things that we've mentioned, I think midwives, I don't know how you feel about it, Hayley, Becky's just ducked out to do her own talk. You know, whether you felt after working in a different culture that you had improved your communication skills, you have to... Yeah.
One of the things that I took from it as well is the passion of the midwives over there about making change, and it makes you come back and, well, they've got that passion, they've got so many barriers.
Yeah.
We have barriers, but not to the same extent at all. Why should we try and make some changes over here? But yeah, certainly communication.
Yes, and I definitely think that was my first reaction. Rather than coming back and feeling frustrated, I just thought, goodness, we have a free, amazing service, and we are duty-bound because we have that to make the best of it. Not to moan about it, to make it better. Because, you know, crumbling as the NHS is, it's still there, you know, and it gives you more of a passion to get it right in your own setting, I think. And then I think we need to talk more about global midwifery, really. You know, when you look at the Lancet series, which is quoted all over the place, and the power midwives have to make a better world, basically, economically and through empowering women, is immense, really. And that is the whole world round. You know, we're not just isolated countries anymore, even, I won't talk politics, but, you know, we should be looking across the world how we make it better for women having babies, basically, and we know we have the power to do it, so use that power. So, that's it. Thank you.